Grace and peace be unto you from God our Father and our Lord Jesus Christ. I'm Archbishop Robert Rochford, and you're watching Passing on the Mantle with Pastor Undena.
Welcome to another exciting episode of Passing on the Mantle with Pastor Undena, keeping the foundation and doctrines of the church. And it is so my privilege to be able to have these phenomenal guests come back once again to impart some great wisdom to us regarding the legacy of the church. And today is my special guest, Archbishop Robert Rochford. Yes. This is part of my wish list. I'm just letting you know, part of my wish list.
Oh, thank you.
Because you just have some people that you've been able to watch and grow and see and from a distance, and you say, wow, they got something. And so now that the Lord has been able to give me this platform, it has been, when he told me to do it, I said, okay, Lord, well, you have to make the way in order to make this happen. And I bless the Lord that now we are 27 episodes strong, and we have been continuously growing, continuously developing, and we bless God for having you here, and we cannot wait for you to speak to our lives. So today's topic is going to be, we're going to be talking about leading beyond the title. Archbishop. Now, I have watched you from a distance from the days of Pilgrim Cathedral. I've watched you serve, I've watched you lead, and now the Lord has blessed you to be an archbishop here in the episcopacy.
Yes.
And one thing that I can say, and I've heard your wife, Pastor Lois, how she honored and revered you as a husband and as a man. She respected you, and it was funny because I would watch, the way she addressed you, the way she called you. And that was just as then being single, it was such an honor for me to say, well, you know what, God, if I ever get married, this is what I want. And so now being able to get to know you, to grow you, I see why she was able to honor you, because a wife has to be able to honor her husband at home and in public. And we know that there are many that honor in public but don't honor at home. And I was sharing with you before saying, what is it and how is it that you were able to stay away from the life of what is now being the most prominent thing that's happening in Christendom, scandal?
Yeah. Wow.
How is it that you have been able to deal with your humanity and not allow your humanity to bleed on your priestly?
Wow. Well, first of all, let me thank you for the honor of being on this telecast. And I'm grateful to have this opportunity to speak pertaining to some of the things that you're talking about. As you can see, we are really living in a very, very changing time in regards to church, ministry, leadership, and all of these things that we are broaching today. As it relates to me, I would have to say several things. Number one, my foundation was very, very strong. I'm grateful for those who mentored me. Bishop Norman Rochford, my oldest brother, Dr. Milton Rochford, you know him, Pastor Undena. And these were two very, very great men of God that role modeled before me integrity, humility, passion for ministry, orthodoxy, and so many very, very powerful things that impacted my life at 14 years old. Having that kind of foundation helped me. Secondly, with Lois, who passed in 2014, after that, of course, I'm single, and a whole lot of things can happen. I had women send letters that the Lord showed them that I'm
the famous letters
to be their husband. I had pictures sent to me with numbers, call me, and things of that nature.
I believe it.
In regards to that, I was terrified, and I'll tell you why. For 35 years, I had built up a reputation. What frightened me is that I could lose 35 years of a good reputation in 3 minutes.
Yes. Wow.
I was terrified.
Yes. Yes.
I often teach, even in my church, that Paul said, let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall.
Yes.
And that every day I have to wake up with the realization that if I'm not careful, this could be the day that I cheat on my wife.
My Lord.
This could be the day that I fall into some type of immoral behavior if I don't have the consciousness that none of us are beyond falling.
Yes.
How do we stand, and having done all to stand, continue to stand? And if you don't live with that consciousness, you put yourself in a position where you could fall into something and maybe at my age never recover from it.
That is powerful. So if I dissect that, now that we're living in a time and in a place that I never even thought that we would get to, where preachers are falling publicly by the droves, is it because, because we're good at preaching things in public?
Yes.
And what you say in public, the world is looking to attack you with the same thing that you're preaching against. So now if you're preaching against certain things and then you fall by that same thing that you're preaching against, they're eating you alive.
Oh, yeah.
So now, we can't use the excuse because now I'm human.
Yeah.
I'm just, it was a mistake. No, honey, you have had a full year of these mistakes and now it just got exposed.
Yes.
So now the same word and consciousness that we should have as just having ethics of our Christian walk, is it that we are missing those ethics and that's why we feel that we are above reproach? So no matter what we do, we can just sprinkle some dust on it and say, because I'm just human?
Oh, no.
And everybody makes mistakes? Because now this is the verbiage of the culture now, even in Christendom, just to say, well, you can still accept me, but, just know I make mistakes. But you're still sitting here preaching the gospel to everybody around the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're getting TV shows out of this. You're doing other things, calling it transparency. But is it really transparency?
Well, my answer to that, I guess, would be this. Leadership is always held to a higher standard.
Absolutely.
If any man desires to be a bishop, it says he desires a good work. So it doesn't say he desires a good title. The bishopric is not titular in terms of it being majorly a title.
Right.
You have to remember that when that scripture was written, to be a bishop would cause you to lose your life. So there wasn't a lot of people desiring it. Now being a bishop is a fad.
Yes.
Right.
And it is popular. So a lot of people desire it. So Paul said, if you desire to be a bishop, it's a work. But then he never describes the work. He describes the character of the person who should involve himself in that work, or herself.
Yes.
He first of all says they got to be blameless.
Yes.
Husband of one wife, their relationships have to be in order. Not a broiler, not greedy of money. He gives 16 qualities. Only one of them relate to time. Not a novice, lest being lifted up in pride, he fall into condemnation of the devil. Only one deal with talent, apt to teach. The other 14 deal with integrity. What he is saying is, if you don't have the integrity, even if you desire the office, you cannot be put into it because you'll make a mess of something that you're in but don't have the integrity to fulfill in a way that doesn't bring reproach to you and the church.
So now is the church actually responsible for laying hands on these men and women? And I'm only saying men because now it's more prominent seeing men fall than you do women. Not to say women are not.
Yes, I understand what you're saying.
So it just making a general statement. So are we not looking deep enough into the life and character and the integral parts of our lives in order to operate in this? Because it's good. We can, if you study, I was sharing with someone the other day, anybody that reads the Bible and can comprehend can teach or preach.
Right.
Period.
Right.
You know, that's what you have atheists, Jehovah's Witness. Everybody studies the Bible in order to get you off your game of what you say that you're studying and what you believe. So it doesn't, you don't have to be, you know, saved in order for you to read the Bible.
Yes.
But when it comes down to the sacred offices and the things that we take so sacred to us as being believers, are we not looking deep enough? Like, if you know that you beating your wife, why would you make him a bishop? You know what I'm saying? And I'm saying, because I know of situations such as that. I know these are conversations and dialogues that I even have with my friends and colleagues behind closed doors and unsaved people that know about some things that are going on. So the question still comes about, well, what are y'all people doing in church? Why would I want to come to church if I'm going to do the same thing that you're doing outside of the church? How are you making me seem like I'm a hypocrite for not wanting to come when you're participating in the same kind of behavior or lack thereof?
Well, I think you pose a very wonderful question in terms of, are we looking as watchful as we should, as vigilant as we should? Because, again, if you're talking about leadership, there has to be a standard that leadership is held to that is much higher. If we're elevating someone, we have to look at how they've held the standard as to where they are.
Right.
Because it would be ludicrous to see someone falling on that level, then elevate them to this level and think they're going to do better.
Right.
If your track record does not prove that you have walked in love, humility, and integrity where you are, then to elevate you, we're elevating you to a greater pressure, a greater office, greater responsibility, which would mean more than likely, if you haven't been able to succeed on one level, you're going to really mess up on the next.
Right.
We've got to take time to adjudicate those who are elevating, find out their reputation from the outside and the inside, speak to their family, hear what their wife has to say, what the church has to say. There ought to be a thorough process. We ought to unturn every stone we can to make sure that when we elevate him or her, we did all of the vetting that is necessary to make sure that we're not laying hands on anybody suddenly so that we partake in their sin.
So now you're saying, you mentioned something saying wife. You have some that are single. Where does the church stand now, which is questionable, on single priests and those that are bishops? How can I phrase this delicately? That are suspect in behavior patterns, and there is something that should not be, you know, because of the scandal and some of the truths, but yet we have participated in wanting to be popular and amongst those that are popular, so we're just almost like seemingly we decide to just be renegade and just everybody's going to be, you know, the apostle, everybody's going to be the prophet, everybody's going to be the bishop now, and we're just sanctioning the sin and not looking deeper into what the Bible says about this particular situation.
Well, in choosing leadership, there should be a progression, and part of that progression and part of that process is what you're saying, because some are single.
Yes.
So when you have the married, you speak to the wife. When you have the single, you have to investigate, is there an appropriate lifestyle of morality? Is there an appropriate lifestyle of sexuality? The three major issues that leadership has to be concerned about is power, money, and sex. Usually, one of those three cause leaders to fall.
Right.
So in promoting a leader, we have to examine how have they handled their money, how have they handled their power, how have they handled their sexuality. If there is anything inappropriate in one of those three areas, we're promoting them to fail.
Wow.
Because if you can't be consecrated again on the bottom level, how are you going to do it on the top? When you look at the temptations of Jesus, the first one was in the wilderness.
Right.
The second one was on the pinnacle of the temple.
Right.
The third one was on a mountain. If he falls in the wilderness, just a few people know about it.
Right.
If he falls from the pinnacle of the temple, the whole temple knows about it. If he falls on the mountain, the whole world knows about it.
Right.
The higher you go, the greater your exposure.
Wow.
What you don't handle in the basement will kill you on the top floor if it hasn't been handled.
So now, how do you become, you personally, watching your life? I am sitting in your congregation and I'm watching you as a man of God. I'm watching your dynamics of your family. I'm watching all the great things and the things that you said we want and desire and everything. Mm-hmm. And watching your wife cover you. How important was you, even when you were your marriage, mm-hmm. now even married, how important is it that you know that you have to keep your God integrity intact? And not to say you don't have human feelings.
Yes.
How are you handling your human feelings? Because I'm sure Archbishop is good. We got the great by and by, and we know all the healing scriptures, we know all the worship scriptures and everything. So how does Robert handle Robert? And who is Robert accountable to deal with him when he needs that extra? You know what? You need to check yourself on me.
Well, what Proverbs says is a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. And I think one of the things that we need to seriously consider as leaders is all you have is your reputation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Once that goes, you lose your credibility.
Yes.
And then how can you recover from that? It would be remiss of me to sit here and say, just like everyone else, you can have public success, but we all have private struggles. Mm-hmm. However, knowing the private struggles and making that something that you struggle with is different from making it a lifestyle. Mm. When it is a lifestyle, it is no longer a struggle.
Right.
Mm. When you are struggling with something, it is the indication you haven't been conquered by it.
Yes.
Because when the struggle takes you over, then you've lost. Yes. So if I'm struggling with somebody, a mugger comes against me and we're both fighting, I haven't lost as long as I keep fighting.
Right.
When I stop fighting and he takes over and takes everything I have, then I've lost the battle. What often is happening now, what used to be a struggle becomes a lifestyle, which means now you are stopping the fight and allowing it to take over your life. That should never be for leadership. But how do you avoid that? You have to have accountability. Mm-hmm. Someone has to hold you accountable. There are those in my life that are bishops also, mm-hmm. that I speak to, that I get advice from, that I get counsel from, that when I'm dealing with something that I don't have all of the wisdom or maybe strength to get through, like when I lost Pastor Lois, mm-hmm. It was those bishops that surrounded me during my time of depression.
Yes.
Spoke into my life, called me up, what are you doing?
Right.
Let's go out to lunch. Right. That kept me focused and kept me strong enough to deal with that first year, which was very, very difficult. If I don't have accountability, it can be very, very dangerous because I have no one to answer to. And when I have no one to answer to, I can go far beyond the parameters of what is decent, ethical, and acceptable because there's nobody to answer to. The second thing is self-care. Mm-hmm. You have to take care of yourself because as a leader, there is a danger in leading others while you lose yourself.
Yes.
You take no vacations. You never take time to rest. You don't exercise. Mm-hmm. You're not eating properly. Ministry is dominating your life in such a way that it's unhealthy. You're headed for a fall. Wow. Even Jesus told his disciples, y'all have been ministering, let's go apart. Come apart before you come apart.
Yes.
If you don't slow down at some point you're going to break down. Self-care then becomes very, very important. And then lastly, I would say the consecration of the leader becomes important, because as you're feeding others, if you're not fed, then you're going to get weak while you make them strong. You have to consider all of these things, because if not, eventually there'll be a breakdown.
And how many pastors now are even in the place of have committed suicide over the breakdown?
Yeah.
And it's real. It's real. I was sharing with someone this morning, we were saying how, suicide is a white person's thing. But, folks is committing suicide over the least thing right now, whether you be black, white, or not. And so the church has to speak up, and we have to definitely learn how to heal. And, when the shepherd is broken, what happens to the sheep?
Yes. Leadership is bleedership, and we know that. You're not going to lead unless you bleed. But there is a difference between bleeding for the sheep and bleeding on them.
Yes.
God called us to bleed for them. Just as Jesus, we will be wounded, and we must identify with the hurts of the congregation. But if you don't take care of yourself with the things that I've been talking about, then you start bleeding on them. Now that's when the problems start arising. And when you see that and you have accountability, people can call you in and say, your anger is getting to you now. You got to be careful with that. You don't seem to be patient. You are giving yourself as a workaholic, and you're not taking any rest. That's where that accountability piece really comes in. And every leader, like you said, needs a leader. The call of the shepherd is to lead, feed, and protect the sheep. But who leads, feeds, and protects the shepherd?
Yes.
Every shepherd has to find someone in their life who they can trust to lead, feed, and protect them as they lead, feed, and protect the sheep.
Listen, you heard it here with Passing on the Mantle with Pastor Undena, my guest, Archbishop Robert Rochford. I promised you were going to get some very good information, and we want to thank you, Archbishop, for coming.
My honor.
I see parts 3, 4, and 5 coming up, because we need to hear some more of this, because our leaders need some help. We need some help. Thank you so much once again for tuning in to Passing on the Mantle with Pastor Undena. We will be right back. For more information, log on to PTMU1, that's PTMU1.com.